Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome back to another episode of the Scho Bro Show. This is Steel Curtain Network editor Dave Schofield coming at you Tuesday night. It's about 9:15. Sorry, I had a couple things I had to take care of, but hey, Steelers fans, where else would you rather be? And with me, as always, except when he's not, is my big brother Rich, Big Bro Scho. How does it go?
We're sexy and we know it.
Sure. Okay.
Surprised you with that one, didn't I?
I don't think either of those statements are true. I could argue against both of them since I like to argue the opposite sides of things. That's one that would not be all that difficult for me to do. Yeah, it's the off season. It really is. I didn't think you were going to watch any football this weekend. As Marky D says, I'm just here so I don't get fined. Thank you, Steelers Nation Australia.
I chose and watched. Well, there's one main reason I watched football this weekend. Okay, so I had a basketball game to announce up at the college at 1:00 on Sunday, and when it got, and of course I was there to announce. Renee went up to watch the game. Kyle helps as a student assistant with the basketball team. And Warren, our nephew that lives here, does work study with athletics, and they use all their work study kids to work basketball games. So he was there as well. So the game got over, and Warren came home, wanted to watch football. Basically, Warren wanted to watch football, so we watched football.
Gotcha. Well, there was only 3 games left in the season. And I knew you watched football because of where you chimed into the Slack channel and said, did anyone else just notice the referees run out of the tunnel with the Chiefs? Which I wasn't watching at that time. I was in between. I was trying to get dinner to make, I actually, and I picked up dinner because football was on. But I watched the end of the early game because once it was out of control on my way to pick up Chipotle, and I was getting home and getting out Chipotle whenever they came out the tunnel. But I did get in front of the TV for kickoff. It was a very disappointing weekend for me.
Well, put it this way. So Warren really wanted to watch football. I said, well, I will sit down. I will watch these games. I said, but if our outcome is that our Super Bowl is going to be Chiefs-Eagles, there will be no Super Bowl in this house. Warren agreed.
Yeah.
And said, yeah, I don't really want to see that. And so there will not.
I haven't decided what I'm going to do.
And everybody says, well, watch for the commercials. Yeah. You can see all the commercials before the Super Bowl now.
Yeah, they're with social media and everything and online, you can do that.
So there's no need to do it for that. Honestly, the halftime shows aren't anything worth seeing anymore. They're just not. So, I think Kyle wants to watch a movie, so we'll probably watch a movie instead of having a Super Bowl.
I don't know. It's far enough out now that I haven't decided. It might be. By the time it comes around, I might be disinterested. And by the time it gets there, I might be, I want to watch one more football game. So we'll see how that goes. But that's enough about what's up.
No, it's not. Because it brings me to something else I wanted to at least bring up tonight. So I talked with a lot of people that have then said, you know what? This is not a Super Bowl they wanted to see. Like, take either one of the two teams out and put in the other team that was playing, and you potentially watch the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
But everybody I've talked to said this is not what they wanted to see, and they're not watching. Now, will they follow through with that? I don't know. But here's my prediction. I think a lot of people won't. Okay?
But they're still going to tell us there's record-breaking numbers of viewers.
Exactly. It doesn't matter how many people watch. We're going to be told that it's a record-breaking number of viewers.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the thing. So
now you can move on.
I'm not very happy with either one. But of course, I got all my picks against the spread right the weekend before, and I got none of them because I was picking with who I wanted. As much as I like the Detroit Lions. I've always had a soft spot for them ever since middle school, even when they were terrible. Um, but because of everything going on here, I was really excited the Commanders knocked them off. But knowing that the Commanders, seeing how that finished in the NFC Championship, I kind of wish they wouldn't have, because then that would have made for a very interesting NFC Championship game. Either way,
Well, the Commanders were defensively, especially. The Commanders were a very Jekyll and Hyde team.
yes,
They would either really show up and play or not show up and play.
yeah,
And they were a very Jekyll and Hyde team, and they showed up and played against Detroit.
yeah.
They did not show up and play against Philadelphia.
Yeah. Well, and I will still make the statement. I stand by it. I think Philadelphia has the best roster in the NFL. Best roster doesn't always win football games, but I think they have the best roster up and down.
Yep.
So that's who I'm going to be hoping wins the game, but it's not like I care enough to even watch it.
Can I ask a question? This is a
sure, but so we can finally get to the Steelers.
Yeah, well, this has to do with the second game. I don't want to talk much about the late game, but there is something that is related to that I'd like to ask. Okay.
Okay.
It has to do more so with just professional sports.
Okay.
Okay. How come tennis can get it right?
Yeah, I saw it.
And the NFL cannot.
Yes.
Why can tennis do it
and do it fast?
And the NFL not?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jeff and I have been talking about this and saying it on the Steelers preview and shows like that for a long time. Where I say it's not like they don't have the chips in the ball. They can measure the rotational speed. So there's something already in the ball. So it's not like you might have to have a little bit of a different chip. It's not anything outlandish. It's that, honestly, to me, I don't think the NFL can control it as much if they use too much technology to do so. And I'm not saying it's scripted. I'm not saying it's rigged. Who did I hear say it? The comedian Bill Burr.
Oh yeah,
Rich Eisen. I saw a clip of this.
I love
this. Where he said, "I'm not saying it's scripted. I'm just saying it's massaged." I think is what he said. Mm-hmm. Of certain things, one way or the other. But I mean, I think true NFL fans are tired of it. But I think the NFL doesn't really care about true NFL fans. They're wanting to broaden.
No. So, the NFL doesn't care about fans, period. Mm-hmm. The NFL cares about one thing. Money.
Yeah. Well, and you're not going to have money without fans, but they think if they broaden their fan base, that will bring in more money, and therefore they don't care if they actually abandon their fans otherwise. But let's get back to the Steelers now that we're 8 minutes in.
Hold on. Now you did that. Now you gotta let me nerd for a second.
Oh, okay.
Because Kyle and I have already done something along the lines of what you were just talking about. And that is the NFL would need to understand that you're not going to get the entire bell curve. Mm-hmm. You're only going to get so much of the bell curve. And if you change your product to try to move that section that you get, you could eventually move it in a way where you hurt yourself.
Yes.
They need to be careful.
I'll tell you, Kansas City winning a third time is going to do more damage to the NFL than it is going to help them.
Yep. I agree.
That's why I would not be shocked if they are not victorious. So we'll talk about that a little bit more next week, maybe. But we've got before we get to this topic, we've got some Steelers news. Okay.
If you want to call it news.
Yeah, we had two offensive players added to the Pro Bowl. I mean, I don't know specifically who he was talking about.
I don't even think we should call it the Pro Bowl anymore.
Yeah. Because what J.J. Watt was saying is a participation bowl. He's like, when you've got to go 5 deep in order to get someone to show up, you should just call it the participation bowl. But the two players for the Steelers, Isaac Seumalo was added as a guard. Now, is Isaac Seumalo the best offensive lineman on the Steelers? Not this year. Not this year. So that's one. Then the next thing was but because to me it was, well, honestly, if you want to talk about the best offensive lineman on the Steelers this year, it was actually James Daniels through the first 4 games before he got hurt. He was the best offensive lineman the Steelers had this year.
Through 4 games.
Yeah. I mean,
that may or may not have continued. See, that's the thing.
Yes.
Like, he was through 4 games, but you ready there, nerd? Did you compare his score through 4 games to other offensive linemen on the Steelers through just the first 4 games?
I'm pretty sure that I did at the time, and yeah, I mean, like, if it's so hard to look at stats when it comes to line, so the best thing to do, I honestly, if you want to talk about a number, it is PFF grade, whether you agree with them or not. His PFF grade was through the roof. So, and it was mainly run blocking.
But also then in terms
of a small sample.
Exactly. PFF, that's 4 games is a pretty small sample.
Yeah. So he didn't even qualify to rank otherwise. So therefore, I mean, I felt Zach Frazier was better this year than Isaac Seumalo, but honestly, I don't know if that the guard play in the AFC was all that great anyway. I mean, Zach Frazier, PFF score, he was the 5th best center, but he's behind the alternate for the Pro Bowl because it was Creed Humphrey and Tyler Linderbaum, and then the alternate was the Bills center, who, according to PFF, was lower than Zach Frazier, but still, it is what it is. But a lot of that's name recognition. That's I mean, as we said before, sometimes you actually get it a year after you should. Isaac Seumalo probably should have been a Pro Bowler last year.
Yep.
And that's how it works sometimes with the offensive line. But the other one that I think is hilarious, where's Biggie Bronco in the live chat? I'm sure he's the one pooping around the tire.
That's why he's not here.
Yes.
We know why he's not here.
Is that Russell Wilson was
Look, we love you, Biggie.
Yeah.
But we know why you're not here.
We know why you're not here. What? You mean to tell me Russell Wilson was voted to the Pro Bowl over Bo Nix? There's a lot of people. Like, I don't know who all turned it down. I mean, I know that Mahomes wasn't even a Pro Bowler this year. It was Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. But did Joe Burrow turn it down? Was Justin Herbert one of the ones? I'm trying to think. CJ Stroud? They didn't have him. So I don't know how many they went through. I didn't care enough to look. But here's the other thing you also have to remember, Steelers fans. We're down on Russell Wilson because of the last 4 games that showed his shortcomings. Now, those weren't super apparent through his 11 games. And I'm talking regular season. Through all 11 games. It was more the last 4. So that's why I understand that you're like, the trajectory is not up. It doesn't seem like he's the future. We're going to talk about that more in a little bit, I'm sure. Well, I'll just say this. I know we're sure that we'll talk about that after a bit. But I can also see why, but with some of this, my goodness, you look at that first Cincinnati game, things like that I could see why, and all the hype when he first came out. Come on, Steelers fans. Most of us were behind Russell Wilson when he was playing really well through about 5 or 6 games. But it just didn't.
But the wheels fell off.
So we focus on the last 4 regular season games, the last 5 games overall, which I still think is funny that PFF said that was his best game that he played in the Steelers uniform was the playoff game, which just doesn't. That's why you can't take their stuff seriously.
Yeah. That game that he played in playoffs was better than the game against Cincinnati. Give me a break.
No. So I'm just saying, I find it interesting that he was selected. Good for him. Does that mean that he's going to be the Steelers quarterback next year? I don't know that sways it one way or the other. I mean, my goodness, just think both of those players could end up not being Steelers next year that were added this week. I mean, Sam Allo has one more year, and I'm fine if the Steelers hold on to him for another year, but I also could see where if they decide they want to go another direction as well, just to save the money. I would, if I had to pick one right now, I would say he's here next year.
I would say that as well.
But I'm not saying it's a guarantee. That's
Correct.
why. So when you look at some of these things, so that's why Steelers fans are like, oh my goodness, why are they doing that? How is that? Remember, Tyler Huntley is a Pro Bowler. That was 2 years ago, right? Where so many quarterbacks said, we're doing that. That him, who had taken over for Lamar for a lot of the season, he actually went to the Pro Bowl. So you've got to remember those as well. I would put Russell Wilson higher on the list than what happened 2 years ago.
Dave, we have already talked more about the Pro Bowl than really the Pro Bowl deserves to be talked about in the way that it's done now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is, trying to get people to show up to it is now the difficulty, and that's what makes it a problem. So I think they should just not even do anything with it anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
I think whoever makes the team makes the team. You don't have to fill it in with alternates or anything for people who are injured or people that are in the Super Bowl. No, the team is the team. I would just think that would be better. Anyway, let's get to what we're talking about tonight now that we're almost time for a break. But we were talking about NFL and Steelers stuff. This isn't going to be an overly long top. I mean, we cut it down to 3 that we each are talking about our top 3 takeaways from Art Rooney's press conference. And of course, we don't actually hear the full press conference. I know he does something very similar with it on Steelers.com where he answers a lot of the same stuff to repeat himself and whatnot, but it's not exactly what it was when he sits down with the media. A lot of it's based on reports. So you got to hear the quotes and you got to find places that have the quotes. So you hear the quotes read the quotes, and then you kind of fill in the spaces. You kind of want to see where things are going for. So we're looking at our top 3 takeaways from Art Rooney's press conference. And we each, in typical off-season form of the Scho Bros, when we do our top 5 lists for other things, which I think 2 years ago we had, or one of us might have Isaac Seumalo being a Pro Bowler this year. When it was first-time Pro Bowlers. John S. wants to do a 5 minutes of non-football talk coming back this offseason. We were going to save that for when the NFL season was over because obviously we talked for about 5 minutes about NFL football at the beginning. So that's when we're going to, you know what, we'll have to see if maybe next week we do because there is no games to talk about. We'll see. Rich and I'll have to talk it over. But yeah, that'll be coming back, especially if we can actually keep our shows at a reasonable length. But Rich, here we go. Top 3 takeaways from Art Rooney's press conference. We're going to go from 3 down to 1. I didn't go with exact quotes. I went with ideas.
Yes, so did I. Because, well, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and read the exact quote. I just jotted down the things that stuck out to me.
All right. So let's go ahead and hear your number 3.
Number 3. You first. I always go first. Yes. I'll go first at you go first at number 3s. Then I'll go first at number 2s.
Okay.
Okay.
And if you have, because we didn't really talk about this much before the show, if you have it, you can even say, well, that's my whatever number. If you want to. My number 3 is when talking about specific players, you got a lot of double talk. You know?
Yes, you did.
If you read the quotes about George Pickens, George is a great player and everything. We've got to see if it's going to work out here with us. You know? TJ Watt and everything. We want to work on a contract. But yet, did it really feel all that strong that it was that committed? Like it seemed like he didn't want to hang anybody out to dry, yet didn't want to overly commit as well. That's why I'm calling it double talk about players.
Well, he was trying to be a coach and say stuff without saying stuff, but he's not as versed at it.
Yes.
He does not get to do that as often, so he's not nearly as good. And you got more double talk than saying stuff without saying stuff.
Yes.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So that was my number 3. Just kind of a lot of things with players that you could tell wasn't overly committal one way or the other.
Okay, my number 3 was, to me, I think he made it clear that the Steelers need to do more at the wide receiver position. That
See,
the room was not
put
complete.
That as number 3.
Yes. So that they've got some good pieces, but he didn't feel the room is complete, and that they probably need to try to do some work with that group in the offseason.
Well, I mean, to me, that's like, that's kind of stating the obvious, because he took a very safe place to not double talk. That's a pretty safe place to do it.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
You want to go into his double talk? You were talking about there. He did not double talk everywhere. So basically, in terms of what you were saying with the double talk, any place where he wasn't giving the double talk, that you could pretty much lock in.
Yeah.
Because that's where I think upper management as a group has already made decisions of what the team needs.
Yeah.
The places where there were double talk are places where they haven't talked or made decisions yet.
Or that they don't want to, how do I say this? What's the best way? They don't want to lose any negotiating power.
Correct.
By saying they're going to do what exactly they're going to do. And we're going to get to that one here when we get to the number 2s for sure, because when you talk about mine. But first, we're going to go ahead and take our break. All right, so we're going to break now, and we're going to come back, and then we're going to hit our other top takeaways from Art Rooney's press conference. So if you're with us here live on any of our platforms, we're not going anywhere. But if you're with us here on the audio, stick around. We'll be right back.
Relax, don't worry, no rush, what's the hurry? Relax, don't worry, don't worry, relax. Relax, don't worry, no rush, what's the hurry? Relax, don't worry, don't worry, relax.
It's funny, bro. When I hear our music anymore, I always thought it was appropriate, but here for the last few weeks, it's almost like, I don't know if we can relax and not worry with some of these things. So, all right, you're ready to roll on. I said player double talk. You said need at wide receiver, which was what I almost picked as my number 3. What do you have for your number 2 takeaway?
This is my number 2 man. His name, number 2.
Number 2.
Not looking to add coaching positions.
Gotcha. What all do you want to say about that?
I think it's a mistake. Most of the fan base would say it's a mistake. I'm not saying that you got to add 5 guys, 5 new positions to your staff. But if one position here or maybe 2 positions would potentially really make a difference for your team, why would you not? Mm-hmm. But he seems to have already shot that down. That, to me, was a very, very telling thing in the press conference. And I saw a lot of fans picking up on that in the press conference. A lot of the well, why would we? The standard is the standard, kind of thing. And I think that was the worst look for Art in the whole press conference.
Yes,
what he talked about there.
I agree. So much so, I'm not going to talk about it right now. Instead, I'm going to talk about my number 2 thing.
Okay.
which was the Steelers' quarterback future is still in the future. The real answer for the Steelers going forward at quarterback, like, how do I say it? If the Steelers are going to win another Super Bowl with a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, that's not something that's happening right now. Now, I'm not sure. I understand why they thought maybe, it was cheap. You take a shot. You see if Russell Wilson still has it enough to get you there. I think the answer was down the stretch he didn't. They just still weren't good enough. But the problem is
he wasn't the missing piece. There were more pieces missing than just having Russell Wilson's play.
No,
there was, Dave. Yes, there was. We talked about offensively. We've talked about offensively how outside of George Pickens, you're not going to have anybody else on the offense starting for someone.
I understand, but there's two different ways you can overcome it. You can either get that, like for example, how much better is Jalen Hurts than Russell Wilson? Is there a huge gap there?
No.
I don't think there is either. I just think that he's surrounded by a much better team. So I get that aspect of it. But now I'll ask you this. How big is the gap between Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson?
Bigger than between Jalen Hurts and Russell Wilson.
Oh, absolutely.
But I don't think as big as what you might just be getting ready to make it out to be.
Well, no, my point is you can cover your lack of weapons if you have that great quarterback and great system working together. I mean, look at it. Throughout a lot of the season, Kansas City did not have that great of weapons offensively. Now, they also weren't putting up tons and tons of points either. This was the first game they scored over 30 points this season. So you could look at it that way. My point is, it's almost as if the Steelers went all in on Russell Wilson, not thinking that a Super Bowl winning quarterback could cover for other things, a la Ben Roethlisberger at times, and could get them there when really that wasn't the case.
But Dave,
both of them were short, is my point.
Both of what was short?
Both the quarterback and the supporting cast.
But you're missing something else.
Okay.
I don't think that the Steelers could think that with Russell Wilson, that a Super Bowl winning quarterback would be what would get them over the top with what they had for a roster. Okay, because Ben Roethlisberger wasn't able to do that with a roster looking like this either.
And Roethlisberger didn't have the defense that they had supposedly this year. Look at it. The best Ben Roethlisberger teams, 2016, 2017, around that time.
Correct, but Dave, I'm talking about then 2020.
Yeah.
Even. Okay, the defense was good, and the offense was the offensive weapons are better than what they are now, and Ben Roethlisberger couldn't do it.
Yeah, but Ben Roethlisberger, that was after the injury. He was there for as Ike Taylor told us on our podcast when he was a guest here at the time it was behind the Steel Curtain, now Steel Curtain Network, is that what Ben brought was from above the neck. He didn't really have much left from the neck down. And that's really the case. Ben couldn't, I don't know, they physically could. But my point is, if you had the person running the offense correctly, because you have to remember that's there with everything. And I'm not saying that the Steelers don't have that. But if you took Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow and put them on the Steelers, it could cover a lot more than what Russell Wilson could.
But they're still not getting they're still not getting to the Super Bowl.
I understand what you're saying.
I'm not sure you end up with anything more than exactly what you got.
Yeah. But my point is, I was wondering if the belief was that the Steelers thought they had so much more in Russell Wilson, and it even looked like it for a little bit, than what they actually had. So I can't remember how we got down this exactly where we were to go back to what I'm talking about. Is this also comes back to the whole idea, and this is something I'll probably end up bringing up later on in weeks down the road if you didn't listen to my unpopular opinion podcast that comes out audio form Sunday mornings. That's an off-season show that we have going. If you didn't go back and check it out from this past Sunday when I talked about the Steelers overachieving. To me, the Steelers tried to do their rebuild the wrong way. Shannon White talked about it. I had talked about it back then. They really needed to shore up their line before they tried to get a quarterback, so a quarterback just wasn't back there running for his life. And then that's why I don't know that Kenny Pickett would have ever been the guy, but you didn't get much of an evaluation because of the lack of talent and experience, which now the Steelers are going in the right direction on the offensive line. Now they've highly invested in that. So it's almost like they're resetting. My point is, if Steelers fans think that Russell Wilson or Justin Fields is not ultimately the long-term answer of who could be the next quarterback to win them a Super Bowl, you're not getting an improvement this year. It's just not the right year. So if you want to talk about a quarterback that's going to lead the Steelers well into the future, this isn't the year to do it. And I actually took the whole idea of, well, we would like one of them, but we can't afford both of them, and not really being, if you're not certain that one of them is the guy to do it, or at least you don't want to put that out there publicly, which was more the double talk, then do you really have the guy? That was more my point.
Yeah. Well, kind of as you said, though, we're okay. See, you don't remember, but we are now in the. I'm afraid that the Steelers are now back into the reset of 1983 to 2004.
Yeah.
We're in that time frame where we're going to get guys that you think, oh, this is the guy, or maybe you get somebody and they're decent for a few years and this and that.
Mm-hmm. And they're good enough to even get you to potentially even AFC Championship games, like the Steelers did in the 80s and 90s still.
Or a Super Bowl.
Yeah, or even to the Super Bowl. But to get you all the way there and feel like it's something that's sustainable. Yeah.
But then my thing is this, right? If we realize that quarterback's going to be the iffy spot, that you're not necessarily going to get the quarterback that you are 100%, you're not going to get the Andrew Luck, the Peyton Manning, the Ben Roethlisberger kind of quarterback. Mm-hmm. Okay, then my thought is that you better build everything else
exactly
and get yourself a freaking Trent Dilfer and go win a Super Bowl.
Yeah. So to me, I'm saying when I said the quarterback future, I meant like if you're looking for an answer, like a major upgrade, that's not something that's even really feasible this year based on not a good draft class, not a good free agent class. I know some people are like, oh, Sam Darnold. Really? Would you have been excited about Sam Darnold last year? 1 year in Minnesota in a system that was perfect kind of for him.
I'm not excited about Sam Darnold now.
No. And that's my thing. I mean, to me, he's a rich man's Mitch Trubisky. I still couldn't believe how everyone was so big on Kirk Cousins last year coming off the surgery, that how that was such a great signing by the Falcons with him being there really expensive, and how the Steelers were wasting their time with Russell Wilson at the league minimum. So, but to me, if you're looking, when I said the quarterback future, I probably should have maybe said it as a serious upgrade at quarterback. That's not something you're going to find in 2025. So you've kind of got to decide which one's going to give you a better chance to go out there and potentially have things fall right at the right time and make a run. But you're not, I mean, do you think that Justin Fields could be that guy? That's a question that everyone kind of has to answer. Do you think Russell Wilson has enough left? Because a lot of people had the answer to that. So
Dave, let me tell you, thinking honestly right now with where things are with quarterback, as you said, with it not being a great year, this, that, and everything else. Okay, to quote the great philosopher of no, from not the greatest philosopher, just one of the great philosophers out of the group Public Enemy, and that would be one Terminator X.
Mm-hmm.
Who said one thing. It all comes down to the money.
Yeah.
It all comes down to the money.
I'm in it for the cash. I'm in it for the cash.
Okay. So what I'm saying there is this.
Yeah. Yeah.
If both the quarterbacks that started for the Steelers this year price themselves in a way that doesn't make sense for the Steelers in trying to get everything else done and rebuilt, I see the fact that the Steelers could move on from both.
Honestly, if you're paying either, I mean, some people were like, I heard on like an older Let's Ride, someone saying to Justin Fields, like 3 years, $70 million. I'm like, no. If it's 3 years, I wouldn't go. To me, I wouldn't go over 45.
Yeah.
To me, if you're going to pay more than $15 million for a season for one of these quarterbacks, I'd rather have Kyle Allen for $4 million.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I
Honestly.
agree.
Because here's why. Because Afton says this. I say roll with Fields and draft in 26. This is why I like this. One, will Justin Fields come back to the Steelers for a reasonable price? If he does, that's what I say. Because here's the reason. The reason I would go with, I mean, we're kind of getting off here on this, but this is part of what was brought up with Art Rooney. The reason I would go with Fields is he still a player on the rise? We know Russell Wilson is not a player on the rise. And Art Rooney said, absolutely, age is a factor. That came into the equation. So to me, I feel like what he's saying is, if you want to read, I like Afton's idea. It says roll with Fields and draft in 26. Maybe. If you roll with Fields and he starts even more on the rise, which, stop getting in his head, let him go out there and play, and stop making it be all about takeaways. Sorry, turnovers. I guess I should say that way. Stop making it all about the turnovers. Let him play. Now, when turnovers become a huge problem, then you address it. But until then, you've got to just let him play. Anyway, that's just me. But if Justin Fields does well, then the Steelers are in good shape. If he can show that he can be the guy going forward, and why he was a first round he was in the top 15 somewhere pick. What was he, 10th or 11th? I can't remember. Don't care.
Somewhere around. Yeah, 10th maybe. 11,
yeah.
12, 10, 11, 12, somewhere around there.
Somewhere in that range. I'm probably way off. Someone will correct me. That's fine. But if he's not, then what's going to happen? You're probably going to lose a number of games. And while you're probably not going to be in a position to just draft your next guy, you might be in a position to move up and draft your guy. Think about that. When Kansas City drafted Patrick Mahomes, they were coming off a pretty good season and moved up and got him.
Yeah.
But they only had to go up to 10, wasn't it? I mean, if you want to move up to 4 or 5 next year, you might be. When's the last time the Steelers naturally drafted in the top 10? It's been a very long time. But you might be close enough that you could move. So that's why I like that philosophy. But there was a lot of talk there. In other words, there isn't, maybe the better way I should have said it, there is not certainty at the quarterback position going forward. So if you, I mean, my goodness, we had 16 years of certainty. However many seasons it was with Ben Roethlisberger. We had all those years of certainty. If we're going to have certainty, that's something that's further down the road. It's not something that we're dealing with this offseason.
Yep.
So All right, we talked about that a long time, which is okay.
That's okay. I think our number ones are going to go quicker.
Okay, we'll see.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and do my number one. My number one was the second half of the second part of, I'll call it the quote that was coming from Art Rooney that you
Okay.
just did. Okay. Also having to do with quarterbacks. And he made it clear that the first thing the Steelers have to do before they can do a whole lot personnel wise this offseason is figure out the quarterback position. They got to figure out what they're going to do there before they can talk a whole lot about, okay, where else are we going to spend our money? Because what money they have to spend is going to depend big on how that quarterback room works out.
Yeah.
So I do not think we're going to have to wait tremendously long to figure out what they're going to do in that room. At least lock it down a little better, because they've got to do that before they can do some other stuff.
Yeah.
So
I think you're right. So that was, we kind of had ours inverted a little bit. I talked about quarterback as number 2. You talked about that as number 1. But no,
I put
understand what
it
you're
as number 1 basically because as Art's quote is we can't do much of anything else until we figure out what we're going to do with the quarterback room.
saying. Yep.
That's why it ended up being number 1 for me, just because it's the starting point.
Yeah.
Might not be the most important in terms of our eyes, but to me, I put it at number 1 because it's the starting point.
Gotcha.
It's the first domino. When that domino falls, then the other ones can start to fall and figure things out.
Nah, to me, my number 1 is the first domino, because even before you figure out any of your players, you know what the first domino is? You got to figure out you got to figure out your coaching staff.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much done.
But listen, this is my
done.
number 1. Coaching changes falls on the coaches. Art Rooney's idea of coaching changes is the coaches themselves have to change in what they're doing, because they're not going to change coaches. They're not going to put a different person in there. So if you want any kind of changing when it comes to coaches, it's that the people that are there are going to have to change.
Standard is the standard.
Yeah. Now, you can apply that to any coach you want to personally. You want to apply it to a coordinator, you want to apply it to a head coach, you want to apply it to a position coach, whatever. But what I think is interesting is sometimes you get information that you're not allowed to share that just gives you insight to how things work. And I'm getting tired of Steelers Nation thinking one way when so much of it is off in the other. But notice that Coach Tomlin's like, well, there's going to be some changes. Are you expecting to have the same coaching staff? No, we're going to have some differences there, blah, 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 blah. Coach Tomlin almost acted like there would like to be changes, even with the coaches. But pretty much AR2 shot that down in this press conference. You want to know why? Because he shot it down weeks ago. And to say it without saying it, some information that we've been told, there have been times in the past where it has been the desire to let coaches go. And the answer is no, they're under contract. They're not going to fire anyone under contract. Anyone significant under contract. Watch this tomorrow, someone will get fired. But I mean,
which is why it was huge when the Steelers got rid of Matt Canada.
Which
is why it was huge when the Steelers got rid of Matt Canada. And I still think that one came down to Tomlin going into Rooney and saying,
be careful how much you say. Be careful how much you share. Okay?
What?
That with everything. But I'm just going to say this.
Dave, it's stuff I've said before.
I know. But I'm just saying we know that there were things that even in off seasons that coaches have been wanting, that coaches were not wanting to be on the staff anymore, but they're not going to pay them to not coach. So I'm just going to keep it a little bit more general than specific. So, but because
Okay,
of
finish
this.
yours and go on because you have totally confused me right now.
Well, yeah. But bottom line is, they're not. Could the Steelers take some expiring contracts and let those people go and bring in new coaches? They could. Could they maybe actually cut someone? Okay, here's a story from back in the day. Before the Steelers hired Mike Munchak as their offensive line coach, I don't even remember the guy's name, and I didn't care about looking it up right now. But they brought in an offensive line coach that he did not last the season. But he did last the season. They ended up taking his responsibilities away from him and giving them to the assistant, who at the time was Sean Surratt, or Sarrett, or however you say it, who ended up being the Steelers offensive line coach after Munchak because he was his assistant. But they wouldn't actually pay him the money and tell him to go away. He still came and he still was around the facility because they wouldn't fire him. They just wouldn't let him do anything anymore. They just gave all his responsibilities to others. That's happened within the Pittsburgh Steelers before. And it was a really big deal when they fired a coordinator during the season. And, then Mr. Woodside brings up someone like Adrian Clem. That was something, I wonder how much was taken away from him. That's not who I'm talking about. That was a situation. He was let go with games left in the season because he asked to go. And they said, yes, if you want to go and stop your contract where the Steelers don't pay you, they're going to let you go. But then the Steelers did ultimately end up firing that offensive line coach in the offseason, which was a big deal. But, man, they wouldn't even do it during the season then. So Art Rooney's, what you said about not adding more coaching staff, I think is also frustrating because if they weren't going to replace people, then maybe they should have just added more in order to let things go on. So that is what it is. You all right?
Yeah, I'm just
Okay.
waiting for you to wrap it up.
Yep. So what else do you want to say? So what was your overall tone, your overall feeling, your overall impressions from reading these various quotes from AR2 this week?
Didn't offer a lot of hope, didn't offer a lot of anything, was pretty much status quo, not exciting.
Yeah. It very much felt like a run it back attitude, didn't it? And it's not, yeah, the Steelers could have won one game in Baltimore in December and been AFC North champs and then hosted a playoff game. But when you really sit back and look at it, were they the better team than Baltimore?
Probably not.
No, I don't think so. So I think the big thing is they really, what was your number 3 again? Adding the wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
At least they're admitting that they're going to have to do something there. So we'll see how it goes. I get that this is a dark time for Steelers fans because there's nothing more to really get you encouraged. And Art Rooney, speaking to the media, didn't give me any better reason for hope for things going. It's going to be when the Steelers actually do something, when they can actually sign players and things of that nature. I don't right now. It's hard to get excited for 2025 until you actually see something different. Is that fair to say?
I'm not even sure you see it that. I'm not sure if or when you see something that different.
Well, what if they go out and make some splash in free agency?
Like, what kind of splash are we talking about?
I mean, actually spending some money and, maybe adding a wide receiver or two. Who knows what they're going to do running back wise? I think they can answer some of that in the draft, perhaps, or if they're going to keep anyone around. But
There's a difference between going out and spending money in free agency and going out and spending money on quality free agency. The
Yeah.
Steelers in the past at times have gone out and spent money in free agency, and they've overspent for guys that weren't worth it.
yeah,
So, until you see it, I don't believe it.
I see that you could be that way, but the way I'm looking at it is you're not going to ever do it if you then say, well, then why even it might not work out, so why even bother to try? See, I'm not going to take that attitude either. So yeah,
I'm
trying to
saying
do something is what would be telling for me. Whether or not it works out, that they put in the effort to really try to do it.
yeah. What I'm saying there is Dave is you see things, and we've said this in the past. It's like, oh, the Steelers have spent money and went and got this guy. Wow, that guy's really kind of a coin flip. But could it work out? Could it not? Versus spend a little bit more and get something that is a little better known commodity.
Yeah.
So not saying that it could or couldn't happen, but it's a seeing the Steelers go out and spend more money in free agency on more known commodities is not what we typically see from the Steelers.
Yeah.
So because it's not what I typically see from the Steelers, I'm not saying it can't happen, but until it would happen, I'm not expecting it.
Yep. But, the combination of more cap space than typical. But if you sign one of your quarterbacks, that could eat up some of that.
Exactly. That's why figuring out that quarterback room then was my number one, because if you re-sign Russell Wilson, you're eating up money then out of that cap. Well, that's going to limit what you can do with other free agents.
Yes. Yeah.
You know.
And you say the number one thing. I think it's the highest priority. But to me, when I said the number one thing when it comes to coaches, it's because it happens first. Yeah. That's what I meant by number one. I was going chronologically, not order of importance. So I think we're actually really on the same page there, believe it or not. So, all right, bro, let's get into our big question. And I was going to go in one direction, but now I'm not sure how I'm going to go, unless you had something that you felt that would be a pretty good big question here tonight.
I had nothing based on our topic, so
yeah. So I'm just going to say, because that was going to be too simple. Okay. Because we got to have something that's a short answer. That's a short answer. Boy, you help us out here, live chat. Even if it's not even about the topic we talked about tonight. What's something that you think would be a good Steelers big question here to finish out? Because everything I was going to talk about would be something that people would be typing a long explanation.
You ready? I got one.
Oh, Rich has one. Never mind.
I just came up with one.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, so we were talking about, we just can't, we're still trying to figure out that quarterback position. We had all those years of Ben Roethlisberger. I talked about as I called it, that dark time from 83 to 2004. Ready?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Who was your favorite quarterback in that time of 83 to 2004?
Oh, okay.
Who was your guy? Who was the guy you liked? Who did you have some faith in during that stretch?
Okay. Yeah. My favorite dark period quarterback. You're going to think I'm probably crazy because it wasn't as much about the quarterback play, but I'm going Cordell Stewart. I'm not saying he was the best, but he was my favorite because he was exciting.
He was exciting. and I think he made a mistake. I think he would have been better served to stay as a wide receiver in the league.
I do too.
And play
That
the
might
slash,
come up
and
again
play
here
the,
in recent
and play
weeks.
and play the slash role that he could have made a bigger impact that way.
How about you?
Oh goodness! Believe it or not, the the one that I was probably the most excited about was the one that ended up as the quarterback and got hurt and brought Ben in, and that was Tommy Maddox. Actually,
See, that was gonna be close for
when
me
we
too.
when the Steelers, when Tommy Maddox reemerged in which the XFL or whatever league it was that was going on then, and then the Steelers went out and picked him up, I thought it was a good move. And he even was showing signs of, wow, he's way better now than he was when he was actually in the NFL.
Yeah.
So for me, it was probably there. Did I think he was a long-term solution? No, I thought he
But it was fun.
I thought he was going to serve the role that he was brought in to do, and he was, it was like he's going to be a stopgap for a few years and give us a shot.
Yeah. So I went ahead and put it out there in the live chat for people to go ahead and put them out there. Afton, she agrees with me. Well, I probably took your answer there, didn't I? You might have gone that way if I wouldn't have.
I actually maybe would have said Stewart, but I would have said Stewart, but I still would have said I wished he'd have stayed in the wide receiver slash role.
But here's what's crazy. If you would have said Cordell Stewart, then I would have said Tommy Maddox.
Yeah, I know.
So we kind of both covered it. Because Afton said slash, Mr. Woodside says Cordell Stewart. Thomas Riley, he's worried that people are going to be upset with him because he said Neil O'Donnell. Tim Pratt says bounce pass Bubby. Bounce pass Bubby. Here we go. John S. He said Tommy Maddox. George T. says Cordell. Yeah, this is true. We got to remember this, Rich.
I know. I knew this.
I don't know. I wasn't around. Yeah, there is a large.
Let me hold on. So
the Steelers fan base that wasn't around pre-Ben Roethlisberger.
All right. So Gavin, what your job as a Steeler fan is going to be now is someday down the road they're going to be talking about the quarterbacks that the Steelers went through in the gap between Ben Roethlisberger and the next franchise quarterback for the Steelers.
Yeah.
And you're going to, I may not be around for that anymore. But Gavin, you are. So then it's your job to talk about, hey, as good as we had it, we got to remember the dark years.
Mm-hmm. Yep. See, here we go. TD Tom Dessenberger said slash. Jamie Carlo threw in two in there. Said Cordell and Bubby.
I almost went with Bubby, believe it or not.
There's one that I almost went with that is coming up. Tyler W said Tommy Maddox, but Charlie Y. Mike Tomczak. I almost said because that was exciting because he was quarterbacking when Slash was wide receivering, right?
Wide receivering.
Hey,
wide receivering.
Just I'm trying to say, was that a participle or gerund, or did I actually use that as a verb? I think that's actually a verb. All right. So there we go. So I thought that was a good one. So that's the last name that I see right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
okay. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was making sure there wasn't anyone else who was put out there, which is pretty good, which is pretty fun. To close this up here before I turn it over to Rich for the final thoughts is this. Remember this. Well, first of all, make sure you check it out. All of our podcasts. We got some changes, got some things joining in. There was one I wanted to say tonight. I just didn't know if it was official that I could say it. I know we've got Black and Gold Blueprint with Roy Countryman and Rob. They're going to be joining us with the show regularly, with their show regularly on our network during the off season. I've got my I can't remember the name of my new show. Unpopular Opinion that runs Sunday morning. We've got another show. Dee's going to be doing another show for us here at some point in the off season. It looks like some various things here or there, but we're going to continue to have our podcast. Remember to check it out, steelcurtainetwork.com. Now, if you type in that website, that's going to actually take you to the new look website, most likely. We're still trying to work out some bugs to get all the redirects and everything down. I haven't got an update on that yet. It looks really nice. It's just got to be able to work for us. So unfortunately, maybe Jeff has given updates on that, but that's not me right now. But remember, Steelers fans, there are 15 other AFC teams not named the Kansas City Chiefs that for years now have been struggling to get to and win the big game. As much as the Steelers came up short this season, so did the Bills, so did the Ravens, so did the Texans. I mean, my goodness, the Bengals didn't even make the playoffs. So it's not an excuse. I'm just letting you know we have a lot of company.
Yes.
Of as fans that are disappointed that their team didn't get there. All right, Rich, what do you have here to close us out tonight?
Hey, close us out. Believe it or not, we've got one of those rare weeks where we're coming up and there's no football. Do you realize this is the first week in a long time that there's no football? And don't tell me that the participation game or whatever it is that you're going to.
No, that's not football. They're not wearing pads.
That's what I'm saying. So this is the first time in a long time no football.
Technically, there's the Senior Bowl.
That's not professional football.
I know. No, you're saying professional football. I know. So we're going the first weekend in September where there was no games. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a while. I hope everybody survives. Yeah. I know I am. I'm kind of taking a weekend and I got some other things that I need to get accomplished here around, Casa de Schofield here. And so I've got some plans to get some other things done, believe it or not, so that I can be ready for when spring gets here. I say that as we are coming up through the end of January, and I still think every flake of snow that fell in the first couple days of January is still on the ground here. Yeah. But I digress. Anyway, stick to it out there this weekend with no football. They're Steeler family. Unfortunately, that following week, I don't know if you're going to be like me and not watch football or if you're going to watch that final game of the season. That's up to you. Me, the only kind of football I really look forward to anymore is Steeler football. And we will be right back here next week to talk more about it. Can't wait.
All right.